In the last few weeks, ever since the new year, I've been sort of looking at different organizations and globally, and just looking at organizations that are actually run by women and how the focus is not so much on profit. And I think bottom line is obviously important for companies to be sustainable and to move forward. But I don't think profit is what everything is about. And just in my own example of the 20 years, going on 21, of being in my own business, for me, heart count is so much more important than head count. And I think, as the world moves towards an arena of humanity as opposed to profit, we're seeing that some of the traits that women have, just because we're wired that way, in empathy and in terms of nurturing, is really where the world needs to shift to. And that's why, in my own opinion, I really do think that the future is female. And, the imbalance is huge. We know that only 1% of the world's wealth is in the hands of women, which means that 99% is obviously in the hands of men. But I think there's a shift happening in the world where we're kind of looking down a little bit when people do everything for profit. And we're looking at much more about, whether we're kind to each other, we're kind to employees, or, we're just caring a lot more about human beings and not just about material stuff. I look at my period in the corporate world, and I spent 14 amazing years in corporate affairs as the head of corporate affairs for Barclays. But I have to say that some of the skills that were seen as wrong for bankers, which was really quite soft skills, where I really was wanting to help and wanting to improve the lives of other people, whether it was people that worked for me or whether it was our stakeholders or whether it was charities that we supported. And quite often sort of male-dominated organizations frown upon these soft skills that women have. And I just look at my own organization, and we've had, in 20 years, you can imagine, there have been periods when it's been really, really tough. I mean, the economy of the country our businesses depend on how the country's doing economically, politically. And there have been some very lean, tough years. And I do sometimes wonder that if it had been a man who was, in my seat or running my organization, whether, we would still be the same organization that we are today. And the fact that we're still a family, we're still, our doors are open to our staff that have left and gone on to do other things, and that we, as part of the ethos, as part of our corporate culture, it's really about us, ensuring that the people that walk in here always leave better than when we took them, and that we've imparted some knowledge and helped them become better people. And that's really been very much part of my own culture and what I want to do. But I do wonder sometimes whether organizations that are run by men would see that as an important important legacy. For me, that's very much part of my legacy. It's, yes, profit is important, of course it's important, but how many people are we impacting that in the businesses that we have? And when we talk about impact, so often our minds go to NGOs or not-for-profit, but impact is important, even for companies that are out there to make a profit. How we impact each other, whether it's employees, whether it's our clients, whether it's the guy out there on the street. For me, that's the issue. And I do think that where women are involved in management or in leadership, that really is part of the impact that they want to have. And that's just because we're wired that way. What I find really interesting is that men are quite often taught to apologize for their weaknesses, and women are taught to apologize for their strengths. And I know sort of when I entered the corporate world, it's like, oh God, she's really bossy, or who does she think she is? And I wasn't, or she's really aggressive. I really wasn't aggressive. I was very assertive. I am very assertive. But I think that's part of culture. It's that we're taught that if we make our positions known, then we're seen as aggressive. And yet, men never have to apologize for making their, making their opinion known. And it's interesting, even when when we've had projects and when you look at the differences, a man will always tell you how he contributed to the success of that project. He'll always say, well, you know what, I contributed, I did this. And a woman will never, very rarely will women sort of say, well, this is how I contributed to the success of it. And so, it's really important that we, raise our children, both our sons and our daughters, to appreciate the strengths that they bring to everything that they do, and not having to apologize. And if a man is, quite sensitive and quite empathetic, there's no need to apologize for that. I think it's an amazing trait. And if a woman makes her opinion known and is strong and is able to articulate what her vision is, well, we don't need to apologize for that. In my own organization, we've ensured that women take, they take ownership of some of the great, incredible work that they do. And we've seen, incredible male staff who are just amazing, just able to, to be empathetic. And we've had lots of social responsibility projects that have been actually led by men. And it's just amazing to see that, when we are able to just own who we are and be authentic as people, then both men and women can work together and create just such a winning formula. I just think that, this disproportion that we see in leadership really has to come from us as women, in where we are sort of raising our children to know that they can be anybody that they want to be. They can be whoever they want to be. And sometimes I think, organizations that are sort of built by men, it can be quite difficult to break through. One of the areas I think where women, can succeed is in the model that I've chosen, which was, okay, well, I've done my, 14 years of whatever it was at Barclays, and I've learned a lot, and I've really enjoyed what I'm doing. I've had great experience. How do I then empower other women? And what I did was actually just start my own organization, where I have hired, a large number of women, and been able, and quite often they come straight out of school from cultures where they're always taking taking orders from a man. And so they found it quite sort of challenging when they'd come here and there was a woman giving them those orders, but it's also empowered them to go out there and become leaders themselves. So I think, just owning who we are as women is so important, and really loving the people that we are, just the traits that we have, and let no one ever tell us that the soft traits are not important traits, because as we can see, the world is shifting to the softer traits. We're done with it's all about profit. We're done with all about head count. I think the future is female, and I think the future is about heart count and not head count.